Those are your 7:30 news headlines. We'll have a full bulletin for you at 8. And of course, we'll be talking about insurance and we'll also be talking about retirement. So if you're about to go on retirement, then you do not want to miss this. Well, one of the first issues that we will look at is, of course, some of the advice that you can look forward to, because on the 1st of March next year, retirement funds will be required to ensure that members receive benefit counselling to provide information and also to assist them in making appropriate decisions to enhance their retirement outcomes. Now, our next guest says that research shows that many members of retirement funds do not have a personal financial advisor, and as such, their only access to financial advice is through their scheme's financial advisor. And we'll be in conversation with Catherine Baca, Head of Funds at Work at Momentum Corporate, to tell us more about this. Right. Catherine, good morning. Thanks for coming through.
Thank you very much.
So, Catherine, retirement, and we know many people will use this lump sum to settle debt, maybe to invest in things like children's education, build a house, or, you know, all those sort of things. But, of course, we've seen many people also lose their retirement by spending it recklessly, or perhaps even if the intention wasn't to be reckless, it just happens that it goes down the drain. So first and foremost, how would you advise people to think about this money even before it hits their bank accounts?
I think people need to think about what is the goal of the savings, and the goal is to have an optimal retirement outcome when you retire. Luckily, the only time that you can actually access the full amount is when you resign, so when you change employers, and depending on whether you're pension or provident, but if you've got a pension fund, when you retire, you can only access a third. I think it is very important that, and I think that was the whole reason for retirement benefit counselling being introduced, is to provide people with the information of the impact of some of their decisions. We've seen that South Africans really preserve poorly. So currently we're sitting at about a 10% preservation rate. We say preservation is the concept of not taking your money in a cash lump sum when you leave your employer, but rather leaving it either in the fund that you were in or transferring that to a preservation fund that you can access to buy an annuity with when you reach retirement age.
And I can see many people, you know, sitting with regret and perhaps asking at this stage, you know, why haven't retirement schemes had this option, this benefit before?
Yes, no, I think it is sad, but I think that the good news, if you focus on the positive, is to say that we are moving in the right direction. And we're seeing now, I think about 20, 30 years ago, there was a move from defined benefit schemes to defined contribution, which is currently the predominant pension regime operating, where you it's your retirement savings account is like a bank account. You save what you contribute. And now we are seeing the effects of that, because whatever you've saved, you purchase an annuity with. And we're seeing that people who are living longer, longevity, which we call it, their money is running out. So, but I think the positive thing is that we're moving in such a right direction. And retirement benefit counselling, in my opinion, doesn't just offer members of retirement funds retirement information, but it actually will help to improve the overall level of financial literacy, because most administrators of retirement funds and most funds themselves are using this as an opportunity to not just counsel members on retirement benefits.
So what can members expect in terms of service from these counsellors?
I think it very much also depends on the administrator involved. So Funds at Work is an umbrella fund, which is then administered by an administrator. But the fund is requested to provide access to retirement benefit counselling. But I think because the industry is viewing this as such a positive change, that they are going above and beyond. So benefit statements will have a number where you can contact the retirement benefit counsellor, but also the retirement benefit counselling will be an outbound and an inbound call centre in most institutions that I've heard of so far. Also, there will be, I think we plan on hosting annual member conferences where members can actually come and attend the conferences and get more information. And then also financial education workshops that we are planning on hosting. Together with retirement benefit counselling, one could also have tools that you make available to members to use, to play around with, and to see what would be the impact of some of the decisions that they make.
And Catherine, of course, this will be a requirement as of March next year. Does this mean that it cannot be applied retrospectively, that people who have already retired, do they still not have access to this type of counselling?
Currently, no. Currently, the regulation is for active fund members. But I think what's good about the regulation also is to fix that, almost that inequity. So when you retire, you don't want to be left without access to any information. And if a fund's default annuity is an in-fund living annuity, the trustees are actually now bound to follow up on how are these members doing after retirement. So unfortunately for now, not retrospectively, but I'm almost convinced that if members that have retired from a fund would like to access this information, because that's predominantly what retirement benefit counselling is. It's disclosure and explanation in clear and understandable language. And I'm really convinced that if retired members do contact the counselling of that fund that they belong to, they won't be turned away.
And then often we take for granted that people actually know how to access benefits such as these. But very often we're also proven wrong because people don't actually know. So how does someone go about accessing the services of a counsellor here?
I think we've also found that a lot of people don't even know who's providing their retirement savings for them. And I think that's the starting point. So if you don't know who is the provider of your retirement savings, go and ask your HR or ask for access to a benefit statement. We are regulated, the industry, that members we have to send a benefit statement to members at least annually. So I think that's a very good starting point, is to see, this is my benefit statement, ask for an updated benefit statement. You can either ask HR or you can see who is the appointed financial advisor to your scheme, and you can then ask them for the telephone number of the retirement benefit counselling centre.
So it's a simple phone call and you should be sorted.
Yes.
All right. And then, Catherine, whilst I have you here, let me abuse you very briefly by just asking you about, some of the regulations around, what happens to people, those who are changing jobs, because you indicated just now that, you don't get a lump sum payout for that. So just when people are changing job, when they resign, and of course, when they've been retrenched, what sort of access do they have to their pension funds?
When you change jobs, it's pretty much for me the same thing as when you resign. So resigning and getting a new job, then you do have full access to the full amount in your retirement savings account. And I think there were sounds of actually making preservation compulsory, but unfortunately the sad reality is that we do live in a country with a high unemployment rate, and it's hard to make preservation compulsory because, like you say, if you are retrenched, it's better to have food on the table than to know you've got money for 20, 30 years down the line. So members do have access to 100%. Obviously, I think it's not ideal to take 100% of your benefits as a cash lump sum when you change jobs or resign, but you can actually, you as a member, it's not all or nothing, and I think that's what's wonderful. You can choose which percentage you want as a lump sum and which percentage you want to preserve for your future retirement. And then at retirement, if you are in a pension fund, you can access only a third, and then you're compelled to preserve the other 2/3 of the savings. You have to get an annuity income from that. So I think at least there are ways that there is some protection, but I think the big thing that what needs to take home from this is that you don't have to preserve 100% and you don't have to take cash 100%. You can actually split that and talk to your financial advisor or talk to your retirement benefit counsellor. Use some of the tools that are made available to see what tax will you pay on the benefit that you take as a lump sum and what will be the impact on your future retirement outcomes by certain decisions that you make.
And I was just wondering now, as you're speaking, Catherine, at what stage do you actually have access to this counsellor? Is it at the point where you are now retired and you are just awaiting the money, or at the point of payout? Or can you speak to someone prior to that to actually help you channel your thoughts about what to do with this money?
That's such a good question, and I'm so glad you asked it. The regulations state that people need access 3 months before retirement and at time of preservation, but regulations, it's the minimum that's required. And if we look at the spirit behind it, the spirit behind this law is to enhance retirement outcomes. So these benefit counsellors, the numbers are going to be available on most benefit statements. I'm saying most because of most providers, so I can't speak for all providers or all funds because I don't know what all funds are doing. I can say what the large commercial umbrella funds are intending to do is to make the number available that you can contact the retirement benefit counsellor at any stage, whether you are only thinking of applying for a new job or whether you are 5 years from retirement. Even if you are 10, 15, 20 years from retirement, but you want to know what is the difference between the annuities, what impact will my contribution level or the portfolio that I'm invested in have on my outcomes. So these counsellors will be available 5 days a week. No majority of counselling services provided. They speak all the 11 official languages, so that it's really there to help. And the access that will be granted to members won't be limited to those close to retirement or at resignation.
It's going to be a very interesting benefit because when you think of what people actually use their retirement funds for, and you know, there's a lot of pressure on people coming into money because everybody knows that you're retiring, everybody knows you're going to come into money, and as such the pressure starts to build because everybody has some sort of expectation.
Yes.
But in terms of just reducing debt, is that something that you would advise people do at the point where they come into some of it?
I think, because I'm not a registered financial advisor, so I just want to put that out there. I think the most important thing is where you are faced with these competing items in your budget or what must you do with your savings. That is why retirement benefit counselling is not set to replace financial advice. It's a complementary service, and with retirement benefit counselling, it's easy to access them, and if you don't have an advisor, you don't know who your scheme advisor is, they will help to put you in contact with an advisor. So if there are situations where you need advice, where you've got too many competing items for this money that you can potentially get as a lump sum, that financial advice is incredibly important. So we see retirement benefit counselling and financial advice like in a symbiotic relationship, really complementing each other. Retirement benefit counselling will give you the information and disclosure and help you to better understand what your options are. Once you've been a bit more financially educated on what you can do, you are empowered to ask your financial advisor the right questions, and he can then craft a best of advice solution for you dependent on your circumstances, which obviously are unique and different for each and every member.
I think this is such a crucial intervention and a very timely one as well, at least for those who are headed to retirement. But as Catherine said, surely if you ask your provider, they probably will also, if there's still money there, allow you to access this service. But thanks to Catherine Baca, she's head of funds at work at Momentum Corporate. And remember that on the 1st of March next year, retirement funds will be required to ensure that members receive benefit counselling to provide information and also to assist the members in making appropriate decisions to enhance their retirement outcomes. And the sooner you do it, I would suggest the better.